Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be talking all about Lightroom. So before we kick off, I just want to make sure everyone can hear and see me okay. So let me know in the chat box if you can hear and see me okay, because I would hate to get partway through and then of course not have anyone being able to hear and see me. So we'll just take a couple of seconds to make sure that everything is working. Let's have a look. Okay. I think we're all good. Okay, let's have a look. And of course, a plane has just decided to fly over really low. Hopefully you couldn't hear that. Okay, so yes, Rachel says hello from New Zealand. Oh, we have heaps of people joining us. Christy, Claire. Okay, also let me know where you are from and if this is your first, a naughty one in the corner, if this is your first Click Love Grow event that you're attending. So we probably got some of our past grads attending, which is awesome. Some people from our online community on Facebook. And if you're brand new, then I would absolutely love to know as well. I've got Jen from Los Angeles. Krisha has said, will this be recorded? Yes. So this video will be recorded. You'll be sent a replay to watch if you can't make it all. Oh, wow. Tiffany's from Kangaroo Island. It's her first time. Joy, it's her first time. She's in GA. I'm in GA as well. Awesome. Alison is from South Carolina and has watched a million of her videos. Awesome. It's great to have you, Alison. Sophia, first event, and she is from Sydney, Australia. Molly is having internet and children issues. Oh my goodness, did you just see? My internet is okay, it seems. Totally having the children issues. I'm feeling you. And Kelly is ready for Lightroom. Oh my goodness, we have so many people joining us. Hunter Valley from Sandy. Krisha is from Adelaide. Awesome. Okay, so it looks like so many people joining us. If you have any questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to pop them in the chat. If I don't get them and answer them as I'm going through, then we'll have Q&A at the end. So this is a pretty informal webinar. I don't have any slides or, kind of official things presented. So what I'm really going to do is just take you into Lightroom so that we can edit some images. Oh my goodness. I can't believe there's this plane doing super low flybys, which never literally happens. And he's just started naturally. Samantha is doing the enthusiast course. Awesome. Welcome. Emma is from Mulwala, New South Wales. I'm a grad, but this is my first webinar that you remembered to attend. I love it. Awesome. Okay. So just make sure we're all working and I've got all my bits and pieces so that when I share my screen, I can still see your comments. It's always a logistical juggle doing these. Okay, I'll just give you a super quick intro. My name is Lou. I am an Australian currently living in Savannah, Georgia, which is, I know it's a funny kind of jump, but my husband and I were both in the military for a long time. He was in for 15 years, just got out, and we'd been posted to the US, it must have been like 6-7 years ago. And then he got out of the military and we decided to come have another American adventure. So we found ourselves in Savannah, Georgia, which has been lots of fun. And we're heading back to Australia end of the summer, back to Adelaide. So we'll do a little bit of travel before we leave the US, but that's the context because there's probably some people thinking, why do you don't have a Savannah accent? I do try really hard. They say y'all a lot here, so I do try and pepper in a y'all every now and then. Awesome. Okay, so as I was saying, my name is Lou. Click Love Grow is the community that you're a part of. That's how you found us. And so we teach online photography courses. We have an enthusiast photography course, which is aimed at beginners. We have an advanced level course, which is lots of fun. We jump in a little bit deeper. And we also have a Lightroom training. So what I've done is I've grabbed out a couple of different images from our Lightroom training course. And so that's what I'm showing you today. So kind of a sample of that particular program. And as I said, it's nice and informal. I'll take you into Lightroom and show you what we'll do. Now, the reason that I love Lightroom, and some of you may already have Lightroom, and Kelly says she's a y'all girl. I do love a good yell. So I love Lightroom, but here's the thing. When I was first learning photography, I actually started editing on Photoshop Elements, which is also a really great tool. So I bought Photoshop Elements. I was kind of playing and learning in that. And when I started taking photography a little bit more seriously and I was doing a lot of clients, you know, I heard people talking about Lightroom. I even bought it and it sat on my desktop for like 6 months because I'd opened it once or twice and I was like, I don't understand. I don't have the time or the energy. I can't figure it out because, you know, on first glance, it did not seem easy. So I shut it down and I didn't even look at it. And then I just was like, I really should figure it out. And I still kept hearing people talking about Lightroom. And you know what? As soon as I actually just jumped in there, how to play, took some, you know, tutorials and stuff, I was like, oh my goodness, it's so much easier and so much quicker from a workflow and a processing point of view than what I was doing in Photoshop Elements. So I totally switched over and now I would say I use Lightroom 99.9% of the time. There's a couple of things that Lightroom still do better, that Photoshop still do better, but I do all my initial edits in Lightroom. And if I need to, I'll jump over into Photoshop. And I did use Photoshop a little bit more when I was doing boudoir photography because there was a lot of retouching that I used to do. But for kids and families, pretty much find that Lightroom ticks most of the boxes. And so if you are thinking, okay, well, I'm not even editing at all, and good on you for coming on the webinar if that's where you are. So the post-processing is not, again, it's not something that you have to do. You know, we can take photos and enjoy them, but it's kind of like that next step. It's, you know, like taking photos with a film and then they need to be processed. So shooting photos in RAW, which is a file format, you can't look at them because, or, you know, do anything with them without bringing them into a photo processing software. And it's doing the finishing off. It's making some processing decisions to help you enhance the photo. So it just looks, you know, maybe a little bit crisper and a little bit brighter and a little bit more colorful, and you can really have fun with it. So the things that I wanted to share with you today is that it's actually really easy to use once you know how. So I'm going to step you through like the 3 things that I really do to all my photos in Lightroom. And what I talked about in the video and the newsletter that I sent out is that, you know, a lot of times people buy presets, but I don't actually think that's a great way to start off with, because a preset, you can put it over the photo, which is great. But you're going to have to make tweaks anyway, because usually the photo that you take is not necessarily going to be like lit the same or taken in the same conditions as the photo of the example. So even if you really want to use presets, if you get that knowledge of how to do the processing and what the tweaks and what the tools are, then when you do use a preset, you can make a decision about like how much you want to use it, you know, what kind of adjustments you want to make. So that's why we're talking about Lightroom today. Sandy said there's a plane doing the same over her house. Maybe we live really close. It's funny though, because it's always the way, isn't it? Like you jump on a live call and there's been no noise all day and then it starts, but that is okay. So we've talked about what we're doing today, why I love Lightroom. I've got 3 photos that we'll go through. So I'll show you the before, the after. We will have live Q&A at the end, so you can ask me any questions, but feel free to ask as we go. And if I'll be looking at my screen and I'll look at the comments too. So if I see them and answer them, if not, and I skip past it, feel free to ask it again and we'll have Q&A, or I'll make sure I go back through those comments as well. So let's jump over so that we can get started. So I have to share. Share. So you're going to get like the Doctor Who disappearing. Don't despair. I just have to do that so I can switch. Just check that you can see that okay. Yep, cool. Okay, so this is what it looks like in Lightroom. Let me know that you can see the screen okay. I'll just make sure that that is the case as well. Oh, Nicole has joined us. She's another Australian living in Georgia. Awesome that you're here, Nicole. I'll just make sure everyone can see Joy can see. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so this is one of the photos that we are going to edit, and I literally just came through and edited these again this afternoon so that I could remember and talk through the steps that I take. So as I said, we do have a Lightroom training series, which basically starts at the very beginning, like how to open the program, how to get your photos in there step by step. So what I've done is taken out 3 different photos. And if we have time, I've got a 4th here that we'll do as well as an extra one. So this is inside Lightroom. So up the top here are our little tabs. So the library section, or you can press L. I've come down here, I've chosen my folder, and there's a couple of different ways that you can import. But once you've got your images in, we do the processing in develop mode. So you can press D, choose your photo down here. So this film strip down the bottom is quite handy. And that's one of the features of Lightroom that I really love. So you can have this film strip down the bottom. And you know, you can flick through. There might be a delay, so I'll try and go slowly so that, because I know like running this and having the internet going, sometimes it's not as responsive as it would be. So I'll go a little bit slower. So one of the things I love about Lightroom is this film strip down the bottom, and you can flick through the photos and see which ones come up. Now this can be awesome when you've taken like a whole session of like 100 photos. I totally do that. And one of my favorite features is that you can rate the photos using numbers. So I can look at this photo and I can use my keyboard and hit either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And so I'll always pick like 5 for my keepers, and I can flick through using the arrows going along the film strip and just hit, oh, I like it 5, tap, 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 oh, I like it 5, tap, 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 oh, I like it 5. So then you can come over here, and let's just say you've culled down your first process. You can go show the rated photos, and it will only show you the photos that you have clicked on. So it's just really handy from a workflow point of view. So you do a session, you've got 100 photos. Obviously, they're not all keepers. You can flick through really easily. And then I go even further. So I've got 1, and then I go through, and then I decide which ones to edit. And then when I've completed the edit, I'll give it a different number. So I usually start with 5. Then when I choose my edits, I go 3. And then, you know, when I was doing workflow for clients, when the photos had been ordered and I'd sent them off to the printer or process them and whatever, I'd give them a 1. So it was really easy to either look at all the rated, or you can go look at equal to whatever number. So that is my favorite, one of my favorite tools. Let's go, and then filters off to bring back all the photos. So hopefully that makes sense. And if you didn't know that tool, hopefully that is nice and helpful, because I loved learning about that one. Okay, so let's choose our first photo. Now, the reason I chose this one is because it's a nice indoor soft light photo. And, you know, this nice indoor soft light or outside soft light is what we teach as a great place to start for taking portraits. I'm just sipping my tea, so I'm going quiet. Okay, so I wanted to show this one to show really how simple and easy it is. And as I do this, I'll talk you through the steps that I take. Okay, so I'm going to create a virtual copy, press reset, and take you back to what the original looked like. So this is the original photo. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this photo. The exposure is fine, but you can see that what we're aiming for is something that just looks a little bit more finished. And depending on your screen, hopefully the colors and everything are coming through okay, but let's go back to the beginning. So we're in develop mode, and over here on the right-hand side are all our tools where we can make adjustments. And to be fairly honest, in this particular section, most editing programs, even free ones, even editing on your phone, will usually give you these basic options, right? You can adjust the white balance, so how cool or how warm your image is. You can adjust how bright or dark it is, and even most ones have things like adjusting the contrast and bringing up the shadows and the darkness. So that's what, and the numbers, someone's just asked, what is the number at the top left of the photo icon? That's how many copies of that particular photo I have. So this one here, I just made a copy of it. So it tells me that this is the photo I started with. Then I made a copy and took it back to the edit. So that's what it's referring to there. Okay, so over here, all of these basic settings. So I recommend that, honestly, the best way to like find out what these do is just play with them. Like just jump in there, start moving them around and see what happens, because that's the best way to figure it out. So this is the basics, and I do most of my things here in the basic, but this is what I do. Number one step is I always crop first. So you click on that little button there, and then you have a couple of options. You can, it's in the original format, so you can leave it in the original and just, you know, make it whatever crop you want. I always crop in 5:7. So the reason I crop in 5:7, and I don't do this for my personal photos, because personal photos I do print at 4:6. You know, I just go and get mass photos printed, put them in albums. And when I say I do that, I mean the last time I did that was in 2014, and they still haven't been put in albums. But in all principle, I get my photos printed and put them in albums. One day I will catch up on them all. So anyway, but from a getting printed or doing sessions with clients, that kind of thing, and not everyone does that, so that's fine, up to you. I do 5:7, and the reason is because when I was working as a photographer, I had no intention of selling a photo that was smaller than 5:7. I was never going to sell 6:4 because that's too small, but 5:7 is quite handy because it's very similar dimensions. So let's just say I wanted to make this, like get it enlarged. The crop ratio, so it's nothing to do with the size, just the crop ratio, it cuts in, whereas and if you go from 4:6 to 8:10, it cuts off quite a lot. But I like 5:7 because it's nice and versatile, and I just like it. So that is a good enough reason for me. Okay, so the first thing I do is I crop. Make sure you have this little lock icon locked, because if you don't, you can make it whatever size you want, which is handy in some cases, but in this case I don't. I want it to be 5:7. So I click 5:7, and then what I love is that you can drag it around like this, because I love to straighten. Straight lines in your photos from a compositional point of view will always make a really big difference. It just adds extra, I don't know, oomph to the photos, because a straight photo is just very pleasing to the eye. So that is the first thing I always do. I always crop and I always straighten. And I love these lines. So these are grid lines. And if you go to Tools and you go to Crop Guide Overlay, there are different things that you can choose here. I like to use the thirds because I'm a real rule of thirds kind of girl. I love doing portraits where, you know, this line is on my subject's eye, or, you know, include my elements there. In this kind of photo though, it's a simple, sweet photo. So having her centered is how I wanted to do that. So I totally use these lines. I love having everything straight, everything lined up, everything balanced. And then in this case, we've got this bit of flooring here. I don't feel like I need that. So I bring it up, I've adjusted it to the way I want, hit enter, and that is my crop. So I was obviously talking, but that, you know, normally is a really quick adjustment. So then I literally work my way down the basics. So I say to myself, does the white balance need adjusting? Well, I can have a look and think, well, it's quite warm. The wall behind her was quite warm, and her skin tone is quite warm. Now, if I bring it down, maybe, no. See, and it's okay to do this, by the way. You don't have to have a perfect eye when you look at your photo. You can adjust it a little bit and say, no, I'm happy with it. So to me, the warmth is okay. And then the hue and the tint is fine. And for context, sometimes the white balance can be a lot more difficult when we're inside. But in this particular example here, I was set up in front of big glass sliding doors. So there's heaps and heaps of lovely natural light flowing in. So white balance wasn't really a problem here. Okay. So I'm happy with white balance. I'm leaving that. I come down, and you know what? I am just a light and airy kind of girl. I love my photos to be on the lightly exposed side, and that's my style, and everyone has different styles, so that's fine. So generally I will come in and adjust the exposure a little bit here, and I might come down here and also lift the shadows a bit. See how that just lightened her hair and the color of her ribbon a little bit? So they're my two adjustments. I increase the exposure, I increase the shadows. Now, this photo doesn't look like it needs a lot of it, but I also like to just add a tiny bit of contrast, ever so slightly. I mean, if you go too far, you can see the effect that it has. And if you bring it down, you can see what it does there. So contrast is a really great tool. And in soft light, sometimes photos do need a little bit of extra contrast. This one, not so much. It looks pretty good to me, but I'm adjusting it ever so slightly. And I come down, and already, like all we've done is cropped, brought down the, brought up the exposure a little bit, an ounce of contrast, filled in the shadows a little bit. And if we compare it to the photo before, oh, it's not, where's the before and after? What am I doing? Where's my before and after? Oh, I'm tricking myself. Okay. Of course, when I like practice, it all works perfectly. Let's go to this one and go reset. So we can, okay, so here's our original. We've literally, if I was not talking and just doing this, it probably would have taken me 10 seconds. And you can see straight away, and makes me think, oh, it looks so overexposed, which is fine. I do have my screen way too bright though. Okay, so there are our initial tweaks. I might say to myself, oh, I'll pump up the colors a little bit, but do I need it? Probably not. I'll just add a little bit there to bring out the color in the blue top and the pink. And then in this particular photo, you can see, and this happens a lot with babies and kids, and this is not something that you have to do. I could say to myself, you know what? Her eyes are already beautiful and sharp. We have great light in them. The coloring all looks good to me. The white balance is good. But you can see she has a tiny little bit of redness on her face, which is totally normal for babies. And you know what? I probably wouldn't do it on this photo because it's not distracting. But you know how sometimes babies scratch? My little boy used to scratch himself all the time, and he'd get little red marks on his face. If you do, then, oh, this is why you can't see. It already was on there. Okay, so in this particular photo, you can see it a little bit more now. The luminance. So we've got our basic here. Then we come down to HSL color and black and white. So using the HSL, usually these marks on kids, and sometimes toddlers get it around their mouth as well. A trick that you can use that's quite handy is to come down to the red luminance. So the red is usually different to the skin tone, which is usually orange, which makes it really easy to lighten up the red. And you can see if I push it all the way or darken it. So if you have kids and toddlers that have some red marks on their faces, you can lighten this up and you can see what a difference that makes. It doesn't, I'm not like cloning it out. I'm not completely taking it away. I'm just lightening a little bit so that you can't see it as much. So you can adjust it there. So honest to goodness, that's what we've done. We've cropped it and straightened it. I haven't touched the white balance. I've adjusted the exposure, the contrast a smidge, the shadows, upped the vibrancy ever so slightly, and lightened using the red luminance slider. So if we have a look at the before, it's already a sweet, you know, photo. The exposure is spot on, like technically correct. And then the style that I've chosen to edit is just a light, clean, simple, and there we go. Okay, so Brooke has asked a really good question about, can you print bigger than 5x7? Yes. So when you hit crop, you are choosing not the size of the photo, but you're choosing the ratio. So the ratio is, you know, this by this. And so this file itself is like a ginormous file because it's a raw file. So I can get it printed at whatever sizing I want. It's just that the ratio is this long by that wide. And that's the kind of like cropping that I've used. So hopefully that makes sense. I know that cropping and sizing is really, really confusing. And I know in Photoshop or other editing programs, you can resize to a 5x7, which does actually smallen the size of the file. But in Lightroom, you know, you do all your edits in here and then you export at whatever size that you want. And that has nothing to do with the crop ratio. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So Emma has asked, Lightroom newbie, do your photos need to be taken in RAW or can I edit my JPEG? You can definitely edit a JPEG in Lightroom. You won't have as much side to side leeway. And the reason is because a raw file, so let's just say you take a photo. A raw file is like a giant file, and so it captures a lot of data about the photo, giving you the flexibility to take it a lot brighter or a lot darker. Like all that data is there. You can take it really bright, the data is still there. Take it darker, the data is still there. But if you take a JPEG, the camera does the processing, it compresses the file, it makes the processing decisions and finishes it off. So when you bring that file up into Lightroom, because it's already been a processed, finished file, you don't have all that data retained in the image to go like really bright or really dark. You can do it, but the photo just won't have the same. But, you know, for edits that are quite simple, just like adding a bit of exposure, cropping it, maybe, you know, enhancing the colors a little bit, you can do that in JPEG. And here's my philosophy on JPEG versus RAW. So let's make sure. So when I'm taking photos, let's just say it's kid's birthday party, it's a holiday, it's a trip to the zoo, and I know that I'm going to take a lot of photos that I'm then going to put on my hard drive and intend to print one day, then I'm going to shoot in I'm going to shoot in JPEG. For my own personal photos, when it's like an outing or it's not like any kind of fancy, amazing photo that I'm going to take, I happily shoot in JPEG because I literally just want to like crop those images, perhaps maybe lighten them a little bit, and off I go. And I don't want to be worried about like taking up heaps and heaps of space on my hard drives and processing them, because I'm not interested in, you know, doing a lot to those photos. But as soon as I'm taking photos that I artistically want to play with, or I know that I'm going to process and get printed for the grandparents for Christmas, or, you know, for clients, or anything that's like mildly artistic or I want to play with it, I'll always shoot raw, because then it gives me the flexibility to do that. So, you know, I do use Lightroom for personal photos, for everyday kind of things, but I don't always shoot raw, just so I can take more photos and, you know, not worry about having to do lots of processing. So Betsy said, how bright should your monitor be when editing? Yeah, so mine is brighter than it should be, and that's because, funny story that has nothing to do with the brightness of my computer, but we recently sold our house and we've moved into a temporary apartment because you know, it takes 3 months for your household goods to ship from one continent to another. So we are currently embracing the minimalist lifestyle of a suitcase full of clothes, my computer, and an apartment full of rental stuff. And this apartment does not have lights in the rooms, which I find very strange. I've never lived in a house with no lights. You've got to have lamps everywhere. So my screen is a lot brighter than it should be because I'm in a room with no lights and I'm trying to see. But to answer your specific question, I would say the brightness should be, I usually have about 3/4 brightness because I like bright. But here's the thing. If you are ever going to get photos printed and you're worried that they're not going to look like on your screen, but it's worth doing anyway, get a couple of prints printed, hold them up next to your computer screen and adjust your computer screen to look like the prints. That is the best thing to do, because that way when you're editing, you know, if my screen was really bright and my photo is like, sweet, my photo is lovely and bright as I want it, it's probably going to print duller and darker because my screen is too bright. But that's kind of something that you need to play with. There's no like definitive answer. And also, I don't think you have to buy calibrating software necessarily. But I personally like, you know, getting some prints printed at a place you intend to use and then matching your screen up with what those prints look like. I find that that is the best thing to do. So Kelly said, where did I choose 5x7? So over here, and then I click down next to where the little, what's it called? The thing that you lock, the padlock. The padlock, you click down next to the padlock and you can choose, or you can enter custom. So I like 5x7. There's no rules on that. I just happen to like it. Okay, so that is our first photo. Here's the after, here's the before, and literally I'm just going to show you how quick it is. So I'm going to do it. There you go. That is literally how long it took. And that's why I don't think presets are necessary because I think that really simple, clean edits once you know how to do them and you're comfortable doing them and you practice, makes a big difference. And you can adjust however you like. So I'm going to reset that so that we have our before and after. So there's our before, there is our after, and I totally love this shot. Okay, so let's go to the next one, which is a totally different lighting situation, and it's going to be something where we get a little bit more creative. So Roxy has asked, assuming you would do the same printing for social media. You know, I'm not as fussy about putting images on social media because most people are also looking on screens that are quite bright, whether it's their phone or their computer. And look, if I have in the past like posted a photo and gone, oh my goodness, like that looks terrible, take it down, do some adjustments, put it back up again. But generally I find, I know for a fact iPhone screens like compress and brighten and make photos look really good. So I'm not as concerned with that. But when I'm getting printed, and particularly printing for clients, I do want to make sure that my edits match my the prints quite specifically. Okay, so now we're going to edit this photo, which I love. And so in this example, I've edited it vertically, but when I took this shoot, I did it horizontally, and the client actually has it printed really big on her wall, which is awesome. And I really, really love it. So let's create a copy and take it back to create virtual copy. So this one, you're going to gasp. Okay, this is what it looked like. And it was kind of one of those photos where it was a shoot where we went to the beach. This is in Tasmania. I think it's Paper Beach. I think it was like 20 minutes out of Launceston on the Tamar River. So it's a beautiful part of the world. And so it was one of those shoots where it was really overcast, it was raining, and then the sun came out. So the light was changing a lot. And I'm pretty sure that we were walking back to the car because it had started raining, and then suddenly the sun came out just over that hill for the sunset. I'm like, oh my God, we have to run back. So, and then, Emily was being really sweet with banjo. So this, I would not normally take a photo. Like I would try and think about it a little bit more, but this happens, right? Things move fast, kids do things. We take photos that aren't perfect. And so this is one of those examples where it was definitely not a perfect photo. But here's the thing. If we can get our exposure on our subject's skin, and that means we can have our subjects not too bright, not too dark. There's nothing dramatic I have to do here to save the photo when it comes to the subject. If that's what we can aim for, a balanced exposure on our subjects, then, the hardest part is done. So I'm walking through the exact same steps that I used before. So I'm coming in to crop, I'm choosing my 5x7. And as I said, for my client, when I did this, I did it horizontally. I always straighten, of course. And in the shot that I took for her, I'm pretty sure I photoshopped him out. But I'm not going to do that. What we're going to do is stay in Lightroom. Ooh. Okay. So, and another thing that I would probably consider doing is leaving her full length, but I'm completely cropping her hobby out, bringing it to about here, putting her on the right. And so I'm using that thirds line to straighten up my horizon because I'm obsessed with straight horizons because, honest to goodness, I think it makes all the difference in the world to having a really pro looking shot. So I've cropped him out. She's on the thirds line, not as much as I'd like, but okay, I'll leave a bit of his head in so I can show you. Okay, so let's just talk about the crop. If you were shooting in JPEG, then you probably could not crop this much and have all the data retained in the image so that you could print it big enough. And I normally would not take all my photos like this and then zoom it in so far and cut, like I'm basically cutting all this away. So the file becomes a lot smaller, but I'm shooting RAW. The files are big and, I couldn't print this big enough to put on the side of a bus. But as I said, the client, Emily, did get this printed quite big. and it's framed on her wall and it looks fantastic. The quality was still there. So it's totally fine. I would not recommend it, but you know, we don't always take photos as perfect as we want them to. So I think it's fine. Like, we do this, and then if for some reason the printer's like, sorry, your file's not big enough, then it's not big enough and we'd create a different composition. But it was totally fine in this case. So I've done my cropping. I've straightened her. I've straightened the horizon. I'm happy with that. And I've left a little bit of his head so I can show you one of the other tools that I like to use. So let's just get rid of Dad's head. So I'm using the clone tool. You've got clone or heal. These are not as good as the tools that you have available in Photoshop, but if you haven't used Photoshop, then that's fine. But clone, you can come over here and I'll make it a little bit bigger. So you can adjust, you know, the feather, the opacity, so that's how fast it comes out. Sorry, the feathering is the area around it. Okay, so let's do about this big. We just like paint it over Dad's head. And it has chosen somewhere it thinks. I'm like, nah, let's bring it over to here. Get a bit bigger. This is one of those tools. Okay, I'm just going to make it a bigger circle. I was trying to be fancy, it didn't work. So I'm covering all of Dad's head. I just literally hit the key once. It chooses somewhere. I'm like, okay, I'm happy with that. Bring it down a little bit so it matches. Hit close and you're done. So you would not know that Dad's head was there. That was obviously an easy example because there's no sky. If things started to get quite fiddly and there were different things that I had to clone over, then it would become a Photoshop job. But Lightroom is great for these little things. Like, I use it for, you know, removing a car in the background, or if, you know, there's a reflection I don't like, or any types of things. It's quite handy. Okay, so now we've done our crop. Now we're coming to the basics. Now in this photo, I do want to warm it up a little bit. And here's the thing, it's really subtle, but there's a lot of blues, almost purples, oranges in this sunset. And my philosophy to editing is that you want to enhance what's already there. So we don't want to dramatically change it. We don't want to like do any, you know, extreme processing. We just want to do a simple clean edit to enhance what's already in our photo. So in this case, I'm bringing the temp up a little bit and I'm bringing up that purple hue tint a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, and see how subtle that was? But bring it back again. See how it just changes the color of the sky ever so slightly. Just gonna leave it at that. Okay. So now I am going to bring the exposure up, but not too far, because if I bring it too far, I lose the color in my sky. So I'm bringing it to about here, and I'm aiming that I get the exposure right on my subject. And I am using the contrast in this one just a little, because especially in backlit images, so the light is behind her, we do have a little bit of like haziness. If you're taking backlit images, that contrast tool is a total saver. Let's bring that down. I'm filling in the shadows mostly so that we bring back some of the light on them, but you don't want to go too far with the shadows because you can end up with like a bit of grain that you don't want, but we'll talk about that. So just filling the shadows a little bit. And sometimes I like to add in blacks, but of course that does the opposite of filling in the shadows. So it's just a balance there. Okay, so they're the basic adjustments that I've done here. Okay, so now I want to add a bit more color to bring out other photos. So Betsy said, what's the difference between clone and heal? So heal makes a judgment call and decides to like fix the area based on what's around it. Clone is where it takes like the exact area from somewhere else and plops it on top of where you've told it to. So heal lets Lightroom figure out what to do, and so it still chooses an area to make a judgment from, whereas clone is taking an exact piece. And someone asked how I did that. So it's using this tool over here next to the crop tool. You just choose like a spot, put it on baby's head, and see how it grabs the area from there and puts it over the top. And you can adjust the opacity, which is really handy. And heal is still taking it from a spot and then it's trying to match. So best way to play with that is to literally play with it and see how it works. But I just generally prefer the clone in Lightroom. I really like the heel in Photoshop better. Okay, so now we're bringing in some color. So here is a tool that I officially like to call the pull down or the grab down tool. That is not its name, but that's what I'm calling it. So let's bring this back to plain. Okay, so what this does is same as the brush. So you have a brush tool and you have a drag down tool. Both of those, when you click on them, here's the brush tool, here's the drag down tool. It lets you make adjustments that you can paint on wherever you want. So instead of saying make the exposure brighter on the whole photo, I'm like, let's make the exposure brighter, and I'm going to drag it here. So you can choose where you want to put it. Same with the brush. Let's make it brighter, and I'm just going to paint it on here. So it's really handy. I'm not going to do exposure in this case. I want to bring some more color back. So I'm using the drag down tool. I'm bringing, let's see, I'm going to darken it a tiny bit. So this is me enhancing the colors that are already here. So I'm actually going to paint on a tiny bit of purple. I'm going to drag it down. Okay. And then once I've done that, I can adjust how much. So do I want like none? Do I just want a tiny bit? So this is just a judgment call. There's no perfect, but subtlety is usually always the best. So I've added a little bit of that, but I don't really want it over the baby. So I can go to mask. So I'm still in the same tool. Now my computer's having a little moment. It's like you're trying to do too many things. So there's an option, oh, new mask. No, brush mask. Okay, let's, I'm going to do it again. I click on this, mask, brush. I can come down here and erase, click erase. So what I'm going to do is use my little circle to erase the area off baby because I don't need him to have purple on him. Now I'm doing this on my laptop. Editing with a mouse is so much easier, but I'm just working with what I have in my little minimalist living out of a suitcase apartment. Okay, which does not involve a mouse. So I'm just deleting that off him. So I've added a little bit of purple, and you know what? I love the warmth from the sun, but I don't want to change them. So the next thing I'm going to do is go back to my brush, and I want to increase the warmth with my brush. And so I'm just going to paint this. See this? I'm talking and doing. So let's go new. Whenever you get a new brush, new, and I can double click these back to original. See how it's got the color from last time? I don't want the color. So color goes away. Bring the warmth up. And now I'm just going to paint the warmth over these areas. And the great thing about this is once you've painted it on, you can change things and watch what it's doing. And I can see, okay, that's probably the amount that I want. Bring it up here. And then bring the contrast up a little bit more now that I've added those colors. Just to see where I think is the right balance. So again, I'm really happy with that photo. It's much more interesting than the original that we had. It's lighter, it's brighter. We've created a composition that is much more effective, and we're just adding in really subtle colors. Now, if I zoom in here, there is a little bit of graininess on her face, and that's totally normal. She's in focus, but it was late in the day, so the light was poor, and mostly it's because it was probably, maybe it's because it was so far away and I've cropped in. So you can't retain all that data there because, you know, she wasn't in the whole photo. So what I can do is just reduce the noise a little bit to soften that grain. And I'll leave her at that. And I may even, I wanted to leave that in, but now I'm looking at it, I want to crop it a little bit more. Okay, so let's have a look at our original edit we did before. So that one was either further out. And this is the thing, there's not, you don't perfectly have to edit every single time because you're making a judgment call on what you think suits the photo. So here's the original, here is our after. And so again, following that process that I like to follow, I've cropped it to how I want it to be cropped. Cropped it how I want to crop, and I've come down making my adjustments. So again, I've increased the exposure, I've increased the warmth a little bit, the contrast, filled in the shadows a little bit so that I was filling in some of the shadows around their face and in her hair. I haven't touched any of the colors, I haven't touched any of the other tools, but then we've used the gradient tool to drag in some color, and I used the brush tool to bring back some of the warmth, just so that the sand had like a proper sand color. And like the sun is right here, so it is a really warm photo because the sun is really warm and there's a lot of orange light. So that's how it looked to me at the time, and I wanted this color here. So again, nothing dramatic, really simple, but it makes a big difference to the finished look. And you know what? The way that I've processed it is quite light and airy in color. If you were to look at this photo, you probably could also edit it in a way that was a bit darker, or it could even be a really nice black and white. So that is that photo. Okay, so here is the next one that I wanted to show you. So this was actually a shoot that I did with my daughter a little while ago. Betsy said, do you ever adjust whites and blacks? Yes. So I don't use the whites very often, but I do love using the blacks. That is definitely something that I use quite a lot. Okay, Erin has said, if you were to edit a session, how do you ensure all the photos have the same exact look and feel? Okay, so because I edit, I would say like clean and simple, like I'm not doing any matte editing, I'm not doing anything like too dramatic. All of my photos will kind of look clear and crisp and similar. But the thing is, let's say this photo, for example, is not going to look exactly the same as all the other photos I took during this particular session because the light was different. And so it's totally okay, like different lighting conditions is going to require slightly different processing. But I think if you stick to simple, clean edits, you know, the photo is going to look true to the style that you're editing in. And therefore they'll all have, you know, a similar factor. But you're right, like when I was doing this shoot, most of the photos were inside in really soft light. So the thing that I'm ensuring is that the white balance is all nice and even between them. And, you know, they're all the same brightness, they're all the same contrast. So because I'm not doing anything too dramatic, it kind of helps them all look similar. Okay, and there's something else I was going to say. Oh, and so that leads me to another great feature of Lightroom. Let's just say I had 5 of these photos, all taken in a similar situation, different lighting, similar situation, same lighting, same settings on my camera, the exposure's all the same, and I've adjusted it from this to this, right? But there's different poses, she's pulling cute little different faces. What you can do is so if I'm holding this photo, let's say that I've already edited it, and I hold my shift or command button down and I say this one and this one and this one, you can use the sync button and it brings up all the things that I've adjusted. And so I can choose which ones to use. Sorry, not that I've adjusted, but what I could potentially have adjusted. And if I hit synchronize, that first photo that I chose, it's going to apply these edits to all the photos. So it's amazing because if you are doing a session outside, particularly, I find it extra helpful. And there's like, you know, different poses, and then there's child number 1, child number 2, child number 3, family shot, group shot, couples shot, and they're all in like a similar setup. You can edit the first one, use this sync button, and then get all of them processed. You might make some small tweaks and adjustments, but the bulk is already done. And that's another way to help that your editing is consistent throughout a whole gallery. It's usually when lighting is quite dramatically different. Like this is not a normal edit because it wasn't a normal photo. Like the lighting isn't, you know, consistent with what you already have. It's kind of one of those extra special ones. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so let's do this one now and we'll reset it back to what we had. Okay, so this was a photo I took of my daughter, and so I'm actually going to do another one of these webinars. I'll do it next month. And what I want to do is take you behind the scenes on this shoot. So it was such a beautiful shoot. The light was amazing. My daughter was amazingly being amenable, which is only half true. She was being half a pain, but I did get shots that I loved. And it's a blossom shoot. And the story behind it is that like this location does not look anything what it looks like in the photos. Like it was literally 3 trees like plonked in this little spot. But I was staying with my parents and I was probably like 39 weeks pregnant. So I was waddling But anyway, so my parents live on the top of a hill, and it was obviously autumn. Sorry, spring. Spring is autumn in America. And there were cherry blossoms all around the town. So I'd drive around and I'd see all these cherry blossoms, and particularly I'd see them up and down the street, and I'd be like, oh, it'd be so pretty to shoot. But like up and down a street is not a convenient place. And there'd be usually like one, but I wanted this look with these cherry blossoms. So I noticed there was a nursing home at the bottom of my parents' house with like a park behind it. And because my parents were at the top of the hill, every time I drove down, I'd see this little clump of trees, and they don't blossom for very long. So I took my, daughter, who was not that keen, and my 39-week pregnant self, but we went down and we did this shoot, and I managed to take a lot of like behind the scenes photos. So I'm going to do a webinar next month where I tell you about the equipment that I used, what the lighting looked like, and all those kind of things. So Sophia said, how do you identify the original photo? So you just pick it. So if this was the original photo, so let's just say I've edited one and there's like another 10 here from the same thing. I just click on that photo first, and then I hold the shift or the command key and I click whichever ones I want to edit. So that basically it's just the first one that you click is the one that you have edited. Okay, so let's do this one. This is our before. Again, there's nothing dramatically wrong with this photo. It's well exposed. We have some really pretty color. It's all in focus and everything. But I just want to enhance it, to finish it off, which is where editing comes in. So I do the exact same steps every time. So I crop it first. I'm coming to 5x7, and I'm bringing her onto the third line. Now, here's the thing with this photo. If this was just a regular portrait, I may come in really close, right? So I can see her. But there's all this beautiful color, so I don't want to crop it away. So I'm putting her on the third line, and notice how her hair is flowing in the same direction as the branches. I love that like the branches are leaning into the negative space. Her hair is flowing into the negative space. So all these lines work together. So I want to keep them there. And that's why I'm editing on this side and not, say, for example, going on this side, because it just doesn't make sense to have the negative space here when she's kind of, all the lines are leaning in this way. So that's how I decide how I'm going to crop something. So put her on the thirds because I'm obsessed with thirds. And then we've got this green line here. So I'm definitely going to make sure that that's, because if that's not straight, like over exaggerate, you can kind of tell that it's not straight. At least I can. So straight lines, incorporating all that beautiful color and texture and putting her on the thirds. That's my crop. So always my first step is that one. Okay, so exactly the same. I am going to increase the warmth here because we've already got a lot of warm tones, like her hair, the brown in the jacket, and then this behind her was like reeds and clay. So we've got a bit of orange there. So I'm just increasing it a little bit, but I'm not so much worrying about anything other than her skin tone. So I don't want to bring it too far because I don't want her to look orange. And you can see she's wearing a cream dress. As soon as that starts to lose its color, that's too much. So you can see when it's quite cool, it just looks cool and it looks nicer to come up to that warmth. I'm not going to touch, I will touch it just to see. No, I'm not touching the exposure because my exposure is spot on. I'm happy with that. Bringing up the contrast. And I am increasing the blacks a little bit because I want to bring out the detail in all of this texture here, but I am increasing the shadows a bit just so that we get in there on her jacket and her hair. So again, I've cropped, temperature has gone up, exposure was fine. I have increased the contrast because I think it suits this photo. So bring that up, played with the shadows and the blacks a little bit, and then that's all I'm doing initially. But again, what I want to do is play with some of the color. And so the reason is, see how these are all pink, but behind it there's a lot of green, and that's because the branches themselves are a little bit like mossy. So I am going to use my drag down tool again, its official name, and I'm going to increase the tint to purple, and I'm going to drag it through. Okay, that doesn't give me what I want. So now I'm going to choose, literally I'm going to choose a pinky purple. You don't have to be fussy about the color because we're not using it on high saturation. And then I'm dragging it down here. And again, so that's with none. What I want to do is neutralize, it's responding slowly, is neutralize some of that greenery because it's purple and purpley pink, I want that purpley pink to continue through. So if I turn it off and then turn it back on, you can see that makes a subtle difference. All I'm doing is accentuating and enhancing the color that's already there. I'm not painting on anything that's not there. I'm just letting those pinks and purples stand out and neutralizing those greeny browns that were in there. So I've done that. And again, I don't want that to be on her head. So I'm using the mask brush to erase just off her hair because I don't need any purple on her hair or her face. And it wasn't super obvious, but I'm just making sure because I don't want that there. So press close. And then I'm going to paint on some warmth. So similar to what I did last time. Because I love the warmth and the color. I've done the same thing again. Let's turn our color off. We want no color. We just want warmth. Maybe bring up the exposure a tiny bit. So I'm going to paint this over the areas that already are orange because I want to bring that orange color out a little bit more. So again, you can see if I bring it all the way up, all the way down. So just find the happy balance. Hit done. And there we have our photo. So again, let's go back to, that one has, this is a different edit I did quickly this afternoon, but I like the one we just did. So let's reset it. So that's the original, well exposed, everything's in focus. We've got this beautiful detail, but all we're doing is enhancing what's there, bringing out the color, making it richer, making it warmer. And that's that. So I'm just going to recap what the main tools are that I use and just see if we have any questions. Okay, so we're in develop mode. Once we've brought our photos in, I crop 5x7, and then I work my way down, and I'm predominantly using for my, simple edits, the basic tools, because I feel like that is going to, give you everything that you need when it comes to making enhancements on a photo that's already well adjusted. And so exposure, I usually do, lighten it a little bit, but in this case, I was already happy with the exposure and I didn't want to make it too bright and lose the color and detail there. I have increased the contrast. That's something I usually do in most of my photos. I like bringing a bit more light into the shadow areas. And again, kind of offsets the contrast a little bit, but I love that light and airy look. Like that's the style that I like to process in. So that's what I use to do that. Played with the blacks a little bit, and then that's it. We've neutralized and brought out the purples up here using the drag down tool, and we've used the brush to paint on a bit more warmth in these orangey areas here. So here's our after, here's our before, and I promised my mum I would send her this photo so she could get it printed, and if my mum's listening, I haven't done that yet, sorry, but I will. Okay, so let's have a look at questions. So Yvette has said, I find it difficult to adjust temp and exposure without making tan skin look orange. Yes, that definitely requires a balance. Something you might be able to use for tan skin is the orange luminance. And if their skin has a lot of orange tone, you might be able to lighten it. See how her skin is going lighter? You wouldn't do it to that extreme, but that's something you might just be able to lighten a tiny bit with the reds to see if that helps you. Or it may just be that you need to bring your white balance down to a little bit cooler. Some situations, legitimately the white balance is really difficult. There's sometimes you just can't make a photo perfect to look because it has a lot of orange tones in it, so it's going to look warm. And if that's someone's skin and they look orange, then you just try and have to balance it the best that you can. Okay, Cindy said, how do you create brushes in Lightroom? Okay, so you come over here and you hit the brush tool and you can make the adjustments as you want. Now, if you have a certain brush that you want to use all the time, if you click down on this little arrow, you can choose ones that are already predetermined. So there's like soften skin, whiten teeth, and then you can actually create your own. So you can, when I do boudoir processing or portrait processing, I like to do editing around the eyes. So I have one where the contrast goes up, the blacks go down. So I make a couple of adjustments here, and then I hit, and then I save it as a preset, and I'll give it a name, and it'll always be there. But you know, you've got the brush, you can make it do whatever you want, or you can use the brushes that are already saved, or you can create your own by going save current setting as new preset. Great question. Okay. So Yvette said, just answered Yvette. Roxy said, when cropping your photos and if your subject is facing to the right, would you be more inclined to crop with the negative space open to the right? Would it be terribly wrong to crop with negative space to the left? Okay, so it wouldn't be terribly wrong. But I generally don't like to crop so that negative space is behind someone or in a part of the photo that doesn't compositionally make sense. So for example, let's just say it was a way more obvious photo and she was, let's say this one, for example, or this one. So in this photo, we need to close our brushes. I wouldn't crop it, for example, like this, because to me, compositionally, that doesn't really make sense or feel as balanced. Now, if I didn't have the room here, I would probably just crop in closer or just change the crop around a little bit. So a good tip is when you're shooting, notice how I always do crop in a little bit. It's a good habit just to take a few steps back, and it means that I've got this versatility to create my crop in post-processing. Obviously, we don't generally want to do it to the extreme, you know, that the backlit photo was with the lady and her baby. That's like too much. But if you do just step back that little bit and you do that like quite often, it becomes a habit, and then you've got more versatility and room to crop your photos. Okay. So let me know if you guys do have any more questions or if I have missed someone's question. Samantha says, can you sharpen eyes with a brush? Yes, you can definitely sharpen eyes with a brush. You can. So there's actually do we have a brush called that? Yes, so I created my own. So Eyes Enhance Dark. Iris Enhance is already there. So the way that I sharpen eyes is, I'll show you here. I bring the exposure down. I bring the blacks down. And you can bring the clarity up and the sharpness up. And so what you do is zoom all the way in to your subject's eyes. A bit too far. And her eyes are lovely and sharp, but I would use my brush, make it nice and small. So Eyes Enhance, make it nice and small. And then generally the best way to do it is to do around the outside of the blacks and the eyelashes. So I mean, I wouldn't do it on her, because she doesn't need it. Let's have a look at this one. But I've obviously done it on this one. So yeah, I use this brush. If I click that, it'll show us where it's painted on, hopefully. It's having a moment. But yeah, I go around. See how there's already naturally a dark black area around the outside of the iris? The best way to sharpen an eye is to just darken that line that's already there and just darken the top line where the lashes are. I mean, she doesn't have many lashes, but that will sharpen sufficiently so that when you zoom all the way out, it enhances the darkness there a little bit. So that's the way that I like to do that. But, you know, for photos that are like this far away, generally, I don't feel like they need sharpening if your focus is on. If your focus is just missed slightly, that's a good way to enhance it a little bit. Okay. Oh, good. I'm glad everyone's found this helpful. It's always great to do this. I quite like showing. I find that showing is an easy way to do it. And so as I said, we do have a Lightroom training course. Sorry, it's not a course. It's a Lightroom training series. And so what I've done is recorded all little videos. So this, I've shown you 3 photos. What I do is I break down the photos. I'll bring it up just to show you your Lightroom introduction. I'll show you inside it, actually. Let's just go inside. So I have videos for everything. So they're quite short videos, but you can, you know, if you've used it before and you know, you can skip them. But like I like to show you how to import photos, how to get ready to edit, what all the tools do, how you can export them. But then what I've done is chosen photos. So like simple portraits, landscape photos, backlit photos, because they're different processing style, and then black and white, because black and white, obviously you can't just go like hit black and white. There's, you know, a finesse to getting black and whites to look sharp. So for each of those styles of photography, I've got 4 different images. So that's available. Oh, we'll go back to Lightroom. And so I'll send you an email about, I don't have the links here or anything. So I will send you guys an email because we are going to, it's normally $160, but I'm going to hold a 2-day sale for the people that have registered and watched the webinar. So I'll send you all the information for that so you can go and have a look. So, someone did ask before. So Sophie, hopefully it was you and you've asked again. So is it okay to buy Lightroom standalone, or should I buy the online version that has a cost per month with free upgrades? Okay, it's totally up to you. But, you know, I bought, so even before the Lightroom, just going to sip my tea. Before the Lightroom subscription came out, I had the same version of Lightroom for years. Like I was using Lightroom 3 when it was up to Lightroom probably 6. And, you know, it was serving me fine. So I didn't feel the need to upgrade. And then eventually, because I needed to upgrade my Lightroom and I was using Photoshop as well, I do pay the subscription. And also because I'm a business, I can obviously offset as a tax, you know, deduction. Whereas if I was shooting personally, and I wasn't using Photoshop, I was just using Lightroom, I'd probably be inclined just to buy Lightroom outright, because it will definitely last a good couple of years. You know, they make adjustments, but the version I have now is great. I have the CC version, which is the subscription. But I also really loved, you know, I had Lightroom 3. I think I had Lightroom 5, and then I went to subscription. So if you don't want to have that recurring payment, and I should probably check if you can still buy it, download, but I think you can still buy it like off Amazon or something as a download, and it may cost about $130. I'm not sure. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Christy has said your Lightroom videos are amazing. I've learned heaps from them. Awesome. Kirsty. I'm so glad that you have enjoyed the Lightroom videos. So our Lightroom videos are a standalone. If you're a Click Love Grow grad, you also get it at a special price. You can get it half off. So, you know, email us if you ever want to get that, because that Lightroom grad will be better than the sale that we're doing. Also, in our advanced photography course, we teach like a whole post-processing. So we go right through Lightroom, but we also do Photoshop, and we also do like beauty and retouching kind of processing, and how to do that cloning, because who was it that said they just can't get cloning right? It is like cloning does take a little bit of practice, Sandra was saying. And I love the Lightroom cloning for like really simple things. So say, for example, I wanted this little pink bit to go away, then I can use the clone tool. I like the clone tool, make it bigger, bring it over here. And I mean, this is probably going to be too big now. And then choose that I want it to copy from down here. And I would probably do that in like smaller sections. Whoops. I could do another one there, bring it over here. And this is a really big area to do it, but you know, we got rid of that purple bit and it just used areas that were existing. But then of course, I don't love how it did it up there, so I'd have to probably be a little bit more careful with it. But it is a really handy tool, but for really delicate type retouching and for beauty retouching, like for portraits or boudoir, I do prefer Photoshop. But the great thing is that once you make all your edits here, you can go right click, edit in, and then you can go into Photoshop and all your edits, you know, your color edits are done. You can just do the little bit of work you want to do, close it down, it'll open it back up in Lightroom, which means when it comes to doing mass export, taking care of all your photos, then you can bring it back into Lightroom to do that. So Virginia says, does Lightroom process digital negative files? Oh, I don't know. I assume a digital negative file is the same as a raw file. Is that are Nikon's called digital negative? Sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. But I would say yes, because a raw file generally is a digital negative. So Sophia says total newbie, and that is totally fine because we are all about helping total newbies. Is how do you get images in RAW? Is it a camera setting? Yeah. So if you have a digital SLR, then I dare to say that most of them, if not all, let you shoot in RAW. And so it is. You can go into menu and it'll be like image size. And so usually you can choose like JPEG small, JPEG medium, JPEG large, and then you can choose RAW. And I think you can choose RAW, small, medium, large too. You can even shoot in both. So it's a setting. The thing to be aware of is you do need a program. Like if you were to shoot RAWs, you do need a program such as Lightroom, or you probably got like a CD with your camera that if it was me, then I lose that kind of stuff. But you can't just open it and look at it. You do need to process it. Even if it's, you bring it in, like do nothing to it, you can export it as a JPEG, and then you can, email it, print it, do whatever you like with it. But it's camera setting. And then for your camera, usually the best thing if you can't find it is to Google, camera model change to RAW. And hopefully that will help. But yeah, so that is RAW versus JPEG. Joan says, can't wait for next month's webinar. Yes, it'll be lots of fun. And I'll obviously post it in the group, email out to let everyone know that we'll be doing that webinar so that you can join in. Cool. Okay. So I can't see any other questions. As I said, this has all been recorded. The recording won't be like an indefinite recording. It will be, if you're like all of these things, we put them in as bonuses for, I do have some more questions. But for this will be up for a couple of days while we have the flash sale for Lightroom, so you can watch it then before it goes down. So Becca has said, how do you decide if the subject's skin is too bright? My sons are pale, and raising contrast, exposure, and shadows sometimes make them look washed out, especially against a dark background. Yeah, so if that's the case, it's totally fine to bring the exposure down to where you think is suitable. I mean, you don't want it so bright that you start to lose detail. Like if they have any, you still want to see all the detail in their skin, like any freckles. You do, and taking the contrast too far, like you say, can actually make the wash too looked out, because the contrast of the background against the skin helps. So on that side, my daughter is pretty fair as well. So if I go too bright, you do kind of start to see where the detail disappears, and that would be too far. So it's just a judgment call and kind of practicing and just saying to yourself, okay, I can still see all the detail. I'm comfortable with that. I think that's good. What you might want to do is play with this filling in the shadows so that the areas around them aren't so contrasty that it washes them out. So you can experiment with that. Okay, so Joy has said, do you have any trainings for studio images where you edit in Photoshop? Yes. So in our advanced photography course, which is held twice a year, so the next one will be September, we do have, so we go into studio off-camera flash photography as well as processing. We show Photoshop. And also in the advanced training, we have live calls kind of like this to go with every lesson. So we have the lesson, there's lots of content in there, you work through it, there's challenges to do, but then we also do a live call. And because they're really small groups, you can ask me anything. And if there's something that's not in the training that you want to know, then I can obviously supplement that and show you and walk you through things. So that is what we have available is the advanced course. Helen has said, Lou, what was the comment about buying Lightroom as a grad? Do we get the link through the grad site? I know, I really should put it on the grad site. If you send us an email, Helen, we will send you that link. It's 50% off if you are a grad. So Roxy has said, if bringing a photo into Photoshop from Lightroom when saving the finished product, if saving in the same photo as the original, do I have to re-import that new edit back into the catalog? So normally, so if you've got it in Photoshop, from Lightroom, okay, so what happens is you click on your photo and you say open in Photoshop. It will say to you, do you want to open with the Lightroom edits? You say yes. It then creates a TIFF file. If that's the default of how it's set up, opens it in Photoshop, you make the edits. When you close it in Photoshop, you don't do anything. You close it and it brings that edited TIFF file back into Lightroom as a different image. So you've got the original, you've got the one that's been edited. So you have both of those there. Emma has said, thank you so much. I found this very interesting. Previously, I've not edited photos, but want to take the next step. It is lots of fun. Sometimes I find the editing like just as fun because you can be creative with it and have a good time. Okay. Oh, so Emma has said, sorry, Lauren, I saw yours too. So Emma has said, is the next step just save? So what you do is you actually export. So what happens is all of these edits, it doesn't change the original photo. So the original photo is still sitting off in its folder on its computer. The edits are saved here in the catalog. So to get them, you use the export. So you hit export and then you can make a bunch of decisions about, and it's pretty easy to follow the bouncing ball. Like where does it, you export it to? Are you putting it in a different folder? What do you want to call it? What size do you want? So you hit export and it renders or processes the file as a JPEG if that's what you've chosen it to be. Oh yeah, so you can choose what format. I pretty much always just go JPEG, hit export. And the best part is like you can export them all at once. So you can hit select all of them. And so, you know, as I said before, when I was doing client galleries, if I had all the photos a client had ordered as number ones, I can easily just look at all my number ones, go Command A, export them at print size, export them at social media size, all done. The originals are still original. The edits are still here in my catalog and the images have been exported as what they need to be. Okay. Okay, so Lauren said, how do you bend a photo in Lightroom? Okay, so let's have a look. Bending a photo is not something you necessarily always want to do, but there's going to be some photos, and this is unprocessed. I kind of want to show you the process now. Make this. So if you come down to lens correction, oh no, here we go, transform. So sometimes if you take a photo, for example, with a wide angle lens and you're up really close to something with lines, you're going to notice that there's a little bit of distortion. What you can do is actually correct that distortion by using these tools here under transform. So you can use auto. So if you had a photo, and I don't have one here, like let's just say you're in a building and you're up really close, you're using a wide angle lens and it distorts the lines around the edges, you can come down and use the transform. You can even the auto is pretty good. Or you can also use this one here, which will help you bend and straighten lines. So either lens distortion on the manual or the transform. And you can kind of just have a play to get your lines straight for that one. See, I think I've curved the ocean. Okay, so that's that one. Alicia has said, been great. Off to watch lesson 2 in your enthusiast class. Awesome. Enjoy lesson 2. And I'm glad you're in our enthusiast class. Okay, so I think that is all our questions. So as I said, if you are a Click Love Grow grad and you want to buy our Lightroom trainings, we have a code specifically for you guys. And Helen, I literally don't know why we don't have it in there. So I'm going to add it in the login area so that you can see the code. I'll make that nice and easy to find so you can get it for 50% off. For everyone else who's watched, we are going to hold a flash sale on the Lightroom training, but I'll email you all the details so you can kind of have a look, see what's included in the videos and get it for an awesome price over that 2 days. And if any of you are considering any of our other classes, they will be held. So we've just started our enthusiast class and welcomed lots of awesome new people. So our next one will be in October for our beginner photography enthusiast class, and our advanced course, which is limited numbers, very much in a style where it's not just trainings, but we have a lot of one-on-one in terms of in-depth feedback on your photos, a lot of critique to help you, plus live calls for every module that we do so that we can really dive down and, you know, answer specifics and help you along the way. So that next one will be in September. And as I said, we're going to have another free webinar next month where I take you behind the scenes on this shoot that I did with my daughter so that I can talk about the equipment that I love to use, the settings, but mostly like positioning yourself in like a location where you're thinking, oh, how do I shoot? Because this was not a big field of blossoms. I just had to maneuver myself strategically so that I could, you know, make it look great. With the layers of blossoming and also working with lighting. So this was light late in the day with a little bit of backlighting. So I want to show you how I set up and positioned because that's always fun as well. And Dana's here. Thank you, Dana, for joining in. Dana has done both of our courses. Sweet. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day or the rest of your evening. It's been lots of fun to chat. And I will hopefully see you all again on our next one and also see you in our communities and in our courses. Bye. Oh, you're getting the